Okay, in this video I'm going to show you what the different abilities are that would be useful to use while you're dungeoneering, and I will show you with the new bind system what I think would be the best binds to use and loadouts for the evolution of combat. I'm going to have to actually go to the live game to show you the bind setups because they don't have the update in the beta, so I'll start with the abilities. Mostly, the basic abilities aren't really that, there's not much thought into them. The only one that's actually, there's only two that I think are really decent as far as damage, and that would be Fury. It hits 150% of your weapon damage over 6 seconds. So it hits 3 times and takes 2 seconds per hit. It's a pretty cool ability. And Cleave hits 125% of your weapon damage across I think it's 3 squares of enemies in front of you. So if you got a pretty packed GD, if you're not using momentum, then Cleave's a pretty good one to use for that. A couple of other basic abilities that aren't for damage that are pretty good to have. Freedom, since magic prayers don't actually fully protect you anymore, you can still get bound while you're praying magic. Even though the chances are only a lot less, it's good to have freedom just in case you get bound. The one downside to that is that if you're using momentum, it will make your momentum expire, so use it wisely, depending on how lazy you are, really. Because it's not hard to get momentum back, especially in duo floors like we're used to. Another basic that's, I wouldn't say it's great. I use it a couple times. If you got an empty room like the one I'm about to go into, it's decent. It'll save you a little bit of time, but I mean the effort that you have to put in probably isn't going to be worth it unless you're really going for like record floors, trying hard. That's pretty much it for the basics. I wouldn't suggest using thresholds too much unless you're killing the boss. There's really only 4 basics or 4 thresholds that would be good to use with dungeoneering because pretty much everybody uses the Primal 2H or Prometheum 2H. First one is Quake. It's okay. I wouldn't use it a lot during a boss. It only deals 100% of your weapon damage. It does drain their defense a little bit, but it only goes down to 90%, so your Blood Rager will do a lot more than that. Another one would be Slaughter, which is a really good one if you have a boss like Block the Pummeler, because when things walk around, like they mainly melee you, and you can get them to walk around the room, it'll do 100% to 250% of your weapon damage over 10 seconds. I believe it hits 3 or 4 times, and then if it moves off the location that you activated it in, it'll do triple that damage. So I think against a boss I used it and I was hitting 588 and it didn't move, so if it did move it would have hit like 16 or 1700 or like 3 or 4 times. So that's a pretty good one as long as you have it against the right boss. The next threshold would be Assault. This is probably the best threshold ability for bossing. It'll hit 219% of your weapon damage over 6 seconds. I believe it hits 3 times. It basically just hits double what you normally hit, but over 6 seconds. Hurricane, it's mainly for pack GDs. It's okay to use at the boss. It'll hit 188% of your weapon damage to adjacent targets. That would probably be good for the trio boss. The same thing would be for Quake, because it'll hit all 3 of them if you get it just right. Another thing when you're at boss is Kick. Kick, or the backhand ability, it stuns. Since bosses can't be stunned, it'll actually hit 188% of your weapon damage, which is almost double what you'd normally hit, and it only takes 15 seconds to cool down, so that's a pretty good one to have. It hits about the same as the Hurricane ability, but only 1 target. Basics, when you're at bosses, you basically just need to mash them and do Slice as often as you can, because it only takes 3 seconds to charge and it'll hit 125% and has a high crit chance. as far as I can tell, ultimate abilities aren't that great to use at bosses. I mean, I use Meteor Strike, which is supposed to hit, 300 to 400% of your damage, but it's always capped at 5,000 damage, which you can easily do with your thresholds, and thresholds only take 15% of your adrenaline away, and you only need 50% to do them. So if you're dying a lot at the boss, you don't have to wait all the way till it's all the way full. It only has to be halfway full, and it'll only drain a little bit. You can use one threshold and then one basic, and you're ready to use a threshold again. So I think it's a lot more efficient that way. I just added Vengeance to my bar because I couldn't think of anything else. Just wanted to keep it full. As far as range ability goes, I don't know. It really depends on what boss you're killing. Like if you were killing the Unholy Curse Bearer, I guess range abilities would be okay. I mean, there's really not much to say about the basics and stuff because those are the only ones you can use. So, a good one, I guess, would be Fragmentation Shot because of the damage it does. And the Binding Shot does the same thing as Kick against the boss. It'll hit 188%. I got Freedom on there, Rapid Fire. Bombardment is a good threshold. It hits 219% of your weapon damage to your target and all adjacent enemies. So, I mean, it's good for regular bosses, but again, like trio boss, it would hit all three of them, so that's pretty good. I was looking at the differences between Incendiary Shot and Dead Shot, and I mean, logic would tell you that Incendiary Shot would be better since it's got so much higher of a requirement, but again, with the damage being capped at 5,000, they're actually right about the same. It says Dead Shot will do 188% of your weapon damage instantly and then 157 damage over time. So if that hits 3 times, well, it doesn't actually matter how many times it does, but the first shot with the Hex Hunter Bow and the Sagittarian arrows, it does about 2,700 damage instantly and then 2,300 over time, so that's right about 5,000. But you also have the chance to crit on the instant shot. With the Incendiary Shot, it'll just shoot the one arrow, and then after 3 seconds it'll explode and hit a cap of 5,000. That's pretty much it with the basic abilities. I'm not really going to demonstrate them for you too much. I mean, you've seen 100 videos demonstrating the abilities. I just wanted to tell you which ones would probably be best for dungeoneering. I'm going to cut now and move on to the bind setups and stuff like that. So, see you in a minute. Alright, this is the binds and loadouts portion of my video. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's not going to take long. My main loadout for hybriding bosses and for just regular going through GDs, running on the whole floor, would be my 2H, my Hex, a Blood Necklace, Primal Plate Body, and Sagittarian Body. That would be the main loadout for having 5 binds. If you're not 120 dungeoneering, I would replace the Blood Necklace with the Sagittarian Body, just because the Blood Necklace isn't that great in the beta. It only gives you like the 5% extra crit chance for each attack style. It's not. I mean, it's still got the ability that it saps monsters' HP and gives it to you. It hits 300 on that. It's actually pretty good, but your HP is one of the most important things with the evolution of combat, so you'll always want to have a plate body on, and you are extremely inaccurate when you're wearing a plate body and using a Hex. The second loadout I have is for pure ranging bosses. I threw my 2H in there just because I don't really have a coif. I mean, you can use a coif if you want to for the extra HP boost, like for Necro, how when you're using your Hex, your DPS is a lot higher. So if you want to add a coif, that's fine. But I just put my 2H in there just in case. It's pretty simple. You just need a Sag body, Sagittarian chaps, your Hex, Blood Necklace, and either a coif or your 2H. I would only use this if you're killing a Hex range only boss like Holy Curse Bearer, Necro, maybe Flesh Crawler, I'm not sure. But yeah, you just, if you die, whenever you go to make your ragers, you just do an extra click. You make your ragers, make your scrolls, and then click bind setup, and then hit the arrow, and you'll wear it in GT, and you start killing the boss. It's pretty simple, and those are the binds that I think would probably be the best. I'm not really worried about magic. I originally made plans to, have a celestial body and a good staff, but I haven't seen a need to use magic at all yet. No, bosses don't have any particular weakness, but of course, with bosses that have high magic level, you want to use your hex on them. Like, that's still the magic level effect is still active on your hex. But yeah, I don't see a need for magic, so I'm not gonna bother with it. I'm also not gonna bother with a pure melee setup because I just, most bosses that are weak to melee die fast anyway. So that's pretty much it. I don't see a need for plate legs, but if you want to do a pure melee setup, I would do it the same as this range setup, except I would have the primal plate body, primal plate legs, hex, blood necklace, and 2H, or replace the hex with a helmet. Completely up to you, but I think this is the most effective setup, so there you go.